Okay, good day again, everyone. It's 5 minutes late already. Thank you for joining. And on behalf of the Brockville team, we welcome this program. I've had contact of are we sharing money? Are we getting loan? How do I invest my money into this oil and gas? All of that. So we hope that this event will give us more insight into what exactly it is that we're talking about today. And you can trust that we have distinguished speakers with combined 45 years experience to talk us through all of it one by one. So just the rules again. Please unmute your please mute your audio and your video. With your audio and your video, when we need it, you'll be asked to unmute again. Then we hope to finish in 1 hour 30 minutes. We hope to finish in 1 hour 30 minutes. And also, if you have any question, you can please engage the chat box. You don't need to unmute, just engage the chat box to put in your questions. I'll also display the email where you want to contact us afterwards. So all the things that you need to know as we progress, you would hear them. And we want to also employ you to please pay attention. We understand that we have diverse, my audience are diverse. I have students and we also have professionals. So we hope to put everybody in together, no one will be lost. So please, if you have any question, just engage the chat box as we proceed. All right, I was saying that this outline is just as brief as this. We would go over them, and in 1 hour 30 minutes, we should finish. All right, again, we want to talk about why we're talking about marginal field now. What's the purpose of the event? We realize that the industry is going through a lot of challenges now. As regards the pandemic, funding, if you want to get any fund now, maybe you have to be mentioning COVID-19. If you're not mentioning any COVID-19, maybe you're not getting international funding or what. And we also know that the federal government last year bidded the bid round for the marginal field went on. So we think it's timely for these developers to know what exactly can they do to strategically position their investment, both for the lenders and the people that are going to be associated in one way or the other in the value chain. So that's why we have brought our distinguished speakers. I can tell you that they are not just sound, they know what they're talking about. So you can be sure that they will answer any of your questions and to have insight into what exactly is this marginal field and what we are talking, how we are going to be considering all of these things into bringing into our investment. So we are considering finance, we are considering development options, all of this to know how it's going to help us to maximize our profit and also pitch our investment well. All right, so of course, Brockville, who are we? People have been asking, who are we? Okay, what do we do? We're an energy and natural resources asset company. We combine our technical and market expertise to deliver research and project development service across the sector. Now, it's not just oil and gas. Well, the technical studies, we engage in the direct investment, the cost analysis, just to help you with high-level analysis to optimize your development strategies and also to maximize profit, of course, because we want your project to be sustainable. So that's why we engage. We have a lot of astute, bespoke team members that are specialized in any of these sectors that I listed. So we hope that at the end of the day, you see the reason why we are not just making it together here to see why you should be a part of us and your firm can benefit from all our various services. All right, so just very quickly, I'm going to be introducing you to the speakers. Along Olatunji is the first speaker. Along Olatunji is a research and investment analyst with over 14 years of professional experience covering banking and finance, energy economics and asset management. Allow me to understand risk and commercial development. She's currently Chief Executive at Brockville Investments Limited, a research-based asset development and management company with a focus on the energy and natural resources sector. Based on her experience with Guarantee Trust Bank PLC, First Bank of Nigeria PLC, and DigiConnect Nigeria Limited, upstream oil, gas, asset management, she has successfully advised on over $10 billion worth of investment and research projects across the value chain of oil, gas, energy, and environmental industries. This includes various upstream oil and gas field development projects, marginal oil field technical and economic analysis for investment, divestiture, and project finance purposes. She holds a master's degree in petroleum geoscience with economics, and she is a charter holder at the Chartered Global Investment Analyst Network, CGIA. Along me is a certified financial modeling and valuation analyst, FMVA, from the Corporate Finance Institute, Vancouver, Canada. Along me is also the co-founder of the Business Outliers and sits on the board of Solve Education, an edtech startup based in Nigeria and Singapore. Of course, second speaker, Akim Adigun. Akim is a geoscientist cum commercial analyst with over 13 years experience in the upstream sector of the oil and gas industry. He started his career in 2008 with Geoscience Solutions Limited, Damata Nigeria Limited as an application support personnel. He moved on to join DigiConnect, a foremost hydrocarbon consulting firm in Nigeria as reservoir geologist and project economist, where he played a pivotal role in personal development, business and client management, project planning and execution, as well as technical and economic advisory. Akim currently works with Green Energy International Limited, operator of the Otakipo field, OML 11, currently producing 6,000 barrels of oil per day as a reservoir geologist and new business venture analyst. He holds a master's degree in applied geophysics from the University of Lagos 2012 and a BSc in geology from University of Ilorin 2006. Akim is apt at packaging small to medium scale oil and gas transactions with focus on strategies for bidding, project financing, structuring, commercialization, planning, and execution. Third of our speaker, Demola Lanisa. Demola Lanisa is a senior exploration geoscientist with 15 years professional experience. 11 of those years have been with the French multinational energy company, Total Energies, where he has held various geoscience roles in exploration and production. He has been directly and actively involved in a number of successful field development projects, as well as hydrocarbon exploration campaigns within the Total Group. Demola obtained a BSc in geology from Obafemi Awolowo University and an MSc in petroleum geoscience from Royal Holloway University of London. He's certified petroleum geophysicist and an active member of NAPI and AAPJ, where he has functioned in various committees as well as held different leadership positions. He is currently a member of the AAPG House of Delegates and a past recipient of the AAPG Distinguished Service Award. His professional interests include evaluating and maturing hydrocarbon opportunities, professional mentoring. Now, of course, Omomi Agunsoye is an award-winning PhD candidate and African Union Scholar in Petroleum Geosciences at the Pan-African University Life and Earth Science Institute, Paul Leslie, University of Ibadan, with research interests in reservoir management and field development planning and asset management. Because we also want to employ you that they'll be skimming about, just skimming the surface. So we have the white paper that was published in this regard of this topic that will be available for download. I'm going to share the link in the chat box so you can download and see through in detail more about what we'll be talking about. And of course, the key topic, the key reason why we are gathered. So I'll just share some interesting points that would, before I call on them, allow me to anchor the discussion. So some interesting point is that about 2.3 billion barrels of crude oil reserve in over 183 fields are classified as marginal. Now, let me just help you with marginal. When we talk about marginal field, imagine the notebook we write, there's a place where we call margin. So you can imagine how that place is marginal. You're supposed to write everything you're supposed to write in that book to that marginal space. You know that you have to do is either you reduce your handwriting or you try to reduce your words. So all those considerations to fit into marginal, to fit into that margin is what we'll be considering today. So marginal, those small fields that we think the small players can handle. And they have been termed marginal because they have not been developed since they discovered them. So some of these lists have been given out over 10 years ago, but because of the marginal economics, or peradventure the big four or this big firm want to rationalize their portfolios. So we talk about this marginal field we're talking about. They have been previously owned by the Shell, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Total, and the estimate we say the resources with them is about 800 million barrels and 4.5 trillion scf of gas. So the federal government is saying, okay, if you're not going to develop it, then we need to leave it out to these indigenous companies. So DPR also estimates that about 100 million of barrel of oil will be added to what we already producing, the 1.4 billion of barrel per day. So from this marginal field, we can get additional 100 million. So that's a good one for saying reserve to update our reserve. And of course, Minister of State, so Mr. Timothy, I beg your pardon, I hope I pronounced it well. He has declared the decade of gas. So he's saying that, okay, let's develop our gas. So that's what we think we should, okay, let's also focus on it. And they've estimated that about $1.174 billion will be needed for gas infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa. And of course, Nigeria is stopping that resource opportunity. So this and many more, our speakers will be opening our eyes to inside information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Momi. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm actually very excited because we have a lot of sign-ups and so many people have come here to join us at Brockville to listen to what we have to say. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I want to give like a global context, before we go into the discussion. So I want to give a global context. So the last marginal field round was around 2003. And at that time, 37 fields were giving out 24 fields to 37 companies. And you can see that only about 11 of them are currently producing. Now, comparing to 2003 to today, there's a lot that has changed. Things like we talk more of climate change now. We talk more of renewable energy. Let me even slow down a bit before I talk about the external features that is affecting the industry. Let's talk about within the industry itself. There's been, 2003, if I try to remember, I'm not even sure I'd gotten my first degree at that point, and you'd see that a lot of things have changed. There's been more discoveries. So, countries like Ghana, they've come on board. You've seen discoveries in Guyana, in Papua New Guinea, and so many new discoveries, new frontier fields that been opened up. So what that does to our industry is that there's so much competition within the industry. And then when you look outside, the renewables I mentioned earlier, so everybody wants low carbon footprints. The world is clamoring for cleaner energy, low carbon. And what that does is that it kind of stifles, when there's so much sources of energy, so there's a lot of energy available, and then it stifles the opportunities for development in our industry. And then if you think about that in the direction of financing, there's the Paris Agreement and the United Nations, people saying some international firms wanting to limit financing to fossil fuels, so oil, gas. Of course, some of them are saying, okay, yeah, we'll develop gas, but maybe coal and oil, they want to put it. So if you look at that perspective, the new marginal field, the developers, project owners, sponsors will begin to face very unique challenges that their counterparts in 2003 didn't even face. So if you now see that, okay, even those in 2003 that didn't face this kind of challenges, how successful have they been, right? So that's really the basis of our conversation today. Like, okay, so how do we make marginal fields? How do we develop them successfully? We want success. We want, the statistics that Momi had given earlier in talking about the amount of reserves that are locked in the 183 marginal fields all over Nigeria, and even the 57 that have been awarded. So you want to see how we can successfully, develop these fields and how quickly they can reach first oil. So that's the basis of the conversation, and we're going to go through a panel discussion between now and 1 o'clock in the next 40 minutes, where our guests, Demola, Lanisa, and Akim Adigo and I will just cover some considerations that we believe developers of marginal fields should take note of. So I would start by, so the investment consideration is one key one. And, when you think about investment consideration, you are like, okay, what do I need to consider when I'm investing in money? So I'm going to call on the speakers now. Demola, before we go ahead, I think it's nice if you can just give maybe just a comment generally on the topic of discussion. Demola, then after Demola, Akim will just go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, allow me. Please confirm you can hear me loud and clear.
Absolutely.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's indeed very exciting to be here this afternoon, and I'm really honored to be part of today's discussion and part of the panel. The topic at hand is an extremely interesting one. We've been waiting for this bid round for quite some time, and it happened, started sometime last year, I think, or was concluded this year. So it has happened. And we've not had a bid round of this magnitude since 2003, as Laomi mentioned earlier. And I believe the robust discussions we'll have today will actually tackle, from an investor's point of view, things to look out for, and also opportunities that are associated with marginal field, marginal fields in general. So I'm excited to be here. I know I will learn a lot, and I also will contribute a lot. So yeah, thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Demola. It's very nice to have you here. Akim, would you like to have a go?
Okay, good morning. Oh, it's afternoon already. So thank you for inviting me for this discussion. I'm excited and I'm happy that this is happening at this time. Okay, I'd just like to reiterate that of the 57 marginal fields I was awarded, about 27 of them is offshore or shallow offshore, as the case may be. And that in its position portends some of the challenges that investors or the owners or the winners of those assets can face. So that's just some sort of introduction and something to think about for me. So I think that will be it from here.
Thank you so much, Akim. It's really exciting to have you here. So let's go straight to the meat of the discussions. I mean, in the white paper that the Brockville project team wrote, we divided the considerations into investment, development, and financing considerations. So I think I'll just follow that pattern, and then we'll have our discussions in the panel. So when we talk about investment considerations, we know that what we're talking about is capital intensive, especially when you consider the signature bonus. I'd read African Oil and Gas report at some point, and you say the signature bonus could be anywhere between 5 to 20 million, or maybe $1 million or whatever. And so fine, maybe a single company was not assigned a field. Let's say they come as a consortium, and then they have to share a portion. But irrespective of how that happens, there's a lot of at stake on the table. So what are the investment considerations that we've identified? And I think that's one of the very first discussion. For me, the first thing we need to do, by definition, the term marginal means that the exploration wells, they will be youngest 10 years old. So at best, I think that the youngest will be 10 years old. So when you consider that means that the assets, the facilities, the wellheads, they are old. And some of them may be rusty, they may be decaying, and it's very important because when you look at the fact that would impact the cost, the capex, for the discussion. So you will not just say I have XYZ number of wells on the field. You need to know that what's the status of each of these wells. So we would advise contacting or connecting with technical experts, to assess, like an audit, to do some sort of audit on each of those wells to be sure that the facilities there, the status, the integrity, and all that. Then another thing would also be that some of these places might not even, the wellheads might not even be accessible. So, I mean, if it's older than 10 years, it's possible that there's a built-up community around that place. So if you want to access it, are you going to maybe even demolish some infrastructures that there or something? It's very possible, especially for those that are onshore. So when you think of those kind of things, you know that there's a lot of due diligence and audit that has to go into it. And so that's what I'm going to use to open this conversation. But I'd like to call on Demola or Akim, and to talk about other things that you considerations that investors or sponsors need to consider. Demola, if you'd like to go first.
Okay, thank you, Laomi, for setting the ball rolling for this very interesting discussion. I think the first thing to do is try to understand, what we mean by marginal field. So the word marginal there actually refers to marginal economics of the field. And, there have been different attempts over time, to institutionalize that by making amendments to the Petroleum Act, but it didn't succeed until 1996. And eventually the first marginal field that was awarded was the Ogbele field, which was in OML 55, if my memory serves me right, and operated previously by Chevron, and then, farmed out as a marginal field to Niger Delta Petroleum, who was able to successfully, and is still successfully operating that field. First oil was in 2005. And the field is still going strong today. I think it's doing about 8,000 barrels per day. And the reserves that they were able to prove was more than double what Chevron had carried in its books, as at that time. So going forward, there were other programs. There was the 2003 round. And as you've mentioned earlier, about 57, or no, not 57, 57 was for last year. I think about 24 fields were awarded, yes, and maybe about 9 or 10 are operated today. So when we say marginal, is a reference to marginal economics, and let me just put that in context. So you take an IOC like Shell, for instance, and maybe they are operating in a particular block, maybe, for example, maybe OML 11. And within that OML, over the years, there are several discoveries that have been made. Of course, the focus will be on the biggest discovery, the easiest to develop, and the biggest. So they do some kind of portfolio optimization, ranking of the prospects, and all that. So normally a threshold is defined, and we say, okay, for instance, maybe anything less than 15 million barrels might not be worth our while in a block where the biggest discovery is close to 1 billion barrels. So you understand what we mean now when we say marginal. So it doesn't necessarily mean that field is uneconomic, but when you have to rank it among other prospects, it doesn't rank very high due to volumes, and perhaps also due to nearness to infrastructure. Very important. If I have a 10 million barrel field that is just 500 meters from the nearest infrastructure, then all of a sudden it becomes very economic, because it doesn't cost too much for me to tie it back to an existing infrastructure or platform. But if that 10 million barrel field is located, say, for instance, maybe about 100 kilometers away, then it's not worth my while, because the cost of laying pipeline, whether onshore and it's even worse offshore in terms of cost, would not justify developing that field. So that's what we're talking about. But 10 million might look like peanuts to Shell, and it's a big price to a smaller company, because that's all they have. They don't have any other thing to look at. So that was the idea behind, the concept behind it, because they have so many of these fields, as you mentioned, Laomi. And in terms of resources, we can't just allow them lay fallow something has to be done. So that was the philosophy and idea behind it. So the law also allows the marginal field operator to operate the field as, under what we call the sole risk contractual agreement. So it's also important to note that before a marginal field can be awarded, certain criteria have to be met. You mentioned one. For instance, the law says that that field, must have been there for at least 10 years with nothing done on it. So that makes it qualify as a marginal field. But there is also the aspect of the law that talks about presidential consent. So at the end of the day, the president has to give a nod that, okay, release these fields as marginal, fields. And then there also has to be the cooperation of the original lease owner, who in this case will be the farmer, and then the awardee would now become the farmee. So then you now go into the contractual framework and all that and how it will work, So essentially that's what it is. And it presents unique opportunities to indigenous and small-scale players. I'll leave it at that for now, so that others can continue.
Thank you, Demola. I think I like the clear explanation of why a field is marginal. So I mean, the field could be marginal today, and then some things will change. And I think that's the mindset behind this. So if a field was marginal for Chevron, like you mentioned, and it's been assigned to another company, MPDC, what made it change? Why was it economical for MPDC to develop it? So these are the kind of things I want to go about. And I think I want Akim to come and talk a bit on marginal economics, because we've had some discussions on this particularly. Akim.
Okay. Thank you. So for an investor, hello, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, positive to both.
Good. So for an investor, there are quite a number of considerations you would like to make. You want to decide on what sort of assets you're looking at. You want to decide on what sort of facilities you're interested in, and access to facility as well. Well, just like Demola said, and allow me, you both have spoken about nearness to facility, which is a very, very big issue when it comes to development. And we see cases where some offshore assets, I'm not sure I'm allowed to mention names here, but I could just give examples of some of the fields that have been in development. We take a case of Ogede Field, which is in Onaiti, a block operated by Chevron. Ogede Field is actually one of the fields that is in the shallow waters and has been able to reach first oil. And that field is amongst one of the fields that was awarded in 2003. However, quite a number of fields surround that same field that was awarded about the same time. And you would ask a question, why have those fields not been able to reach first oil? So we want to talk about synergies. I would not see a reason why there's Ajapa close by. Okay, I was actually referring to Ajapa. So there's Ogede close by. There's Ogede close by. Ajapa is actually the field I was referring to. It has reached first oil and it's doing not badly. It currently has an FPSO or so. I would not see why the other fields just about 2-3 kilometers away are not able to synergize and get to first oil in terms of even nearness to facilities. Sometimes doesn't guarantee. I just wanted to bring that out. If synergy is not, if the fields or the owners of the asset do not decide to synergize. So it's very critical that asset owners or awardees are able to come together and have some sort of joint development because that would ultimately affect the economics. Imagine a case in point where you have 2-3 kilometers fields apart and each of them puts an FPSO offshore. Even the footprint of FPSO is not a good thing for our waterways. So I keep talking about offshore, and you ask, why is this guy talking about offshore? Like I said, 27 of the last marginal fields I was awarded is shallow offshore. And if 27, which is about almost half of the total field that was awarded, has this issue of not being able to synergize, whether with a smaller operator somewhere or with the main OML operator, then these fields may really become uneconomical. Because looking at the numbers, it looks to me the average volume of some of these offshore assets is between 5 to 40 million barrels. That's the average, that's the range of the sort of volumes that has been quoted for some of these fields. You have the Ibom, the Otine, the Osoro, the Odibe, the Umfoniso, the Akamba. Some of them have even been awarded as joint awards. But the question is, how are they able to develop these assets in shallow offshore and will still come out economical? So I would think generally synergy is the first thing. Assets that are near to each other should come together and make sure that they have a joint development strategy. Sometimes it may be tough to get that sort of joint development strategy, whether with the same marginal field operators or with the OML operators. But government should be able to give some sort of decree or some sort of law to be able to enhance synergies between OML operators as well as the marginal field operators within it. So I think I'll take that and let Lavumi speak on that again.
Thank you, Akim. I mean, that was spot on. Why? Because I mean, it's very key to understand that proximity to facility is the key to the success of developing any field. So when you're talking about synergies, and your last point saying that there should be some sort of maybe like a decree or something like a law that encourages synergy. In the farm out agreement is actually there that the farm out agreement that the marginal field owners will sign, that the OML owners, the original OML owners, the farmer in this situation, they are actually supposed to support the development, if by linking them to facilities, if there's any surrounding, because truly the success of the marginal field development will be hinged on how you can link your assets to development. So your initial point about synergies coming together, especially imagine for gas development, if there could be some sort of gas development hub, for fields that are clustered in a certain location, and with that hub, the asset owners will worry about less things. They worry about linking to the hub and getting out their gas out of the system. So I mean, to help us get closer to first oil or first gas or first whatever that we're trying to achieve. So spot on, Akim. Thank you very much. So the next now, just quickly touch on financing consideration, and so that we can move to the next point. So the good part is that the marginal fields, you don't need to drill a wildcat well. You already have your initial well. You probably have some appraisal wells as well. So that helps, and the magnitude of development might not be as big as if you own a very large field, but still there is some limit to the financing that you would have to access. And I'm going to talk a bit more at the end because I think we're still have 20 minutes. So, but I just wanted to touch on the fact that I mentioned that at the beginning that there's this interest in clean energy and all that. So And the fact that marginal fields, especially the owners, when they come together, they don't have the kind of balance sheet that can support corporate finance. So they'll be looking for some very intelligent or innovative kind of financing that can help them. Because at the very early stage where you are, equity is the only way to go. You don't even have reserves that are certified that you want to start exploring other financing. So I think it's very key. But one point I will bring up from this is that having the right kind of corporate governance, and if you think about it, investors want to be sure that when I bring my financing and when we come into your facility, we want to be sure that this project and the drivers of this project, they have the right kind of corporate governance. So putting structures and corporate governance, appointing a board of an independent board that can review and audit, appointing auditors, external auditors and not just your internal auditors, very key. So putting the good corporate governance structure would help most projects go the faster way. And you see that from successes that the fields that will be successful in the past, the 11 fields that were successful in the 2003 round. You see that the fields that move forward, they have that kind of structure that will give somebody confidence, to give an investor the right kind of confidence that is needed to bring the financing into the scheme. So I'll quickly go forward because we also want to cover a lot. I want us to talk about development consideration. So we've talked a bit of this on this, right, when we're talking about investing consideration, but I am first on development consideration. It's technical capability is so key, and what most field owners will do is to find they can come on their own powers and initially bid for this asset and get it, but they need to, and I'm sure a lot of them are already doing that, partner with technical partners, especially international technical partners. And the guidelines to the 2020 marginal field bid round actually allows for that. So yes, to bid, the company must be an indigenous company, the local content thing, but when you want to develop, you're actually allowed to give out a particular percentage, I think up to 40% to technical partners that can come, or even financial partners. So that helps, at the point after you got it, because at this point we've moved away from bid, awarded, and now we're moving towards development. So partnering with the right kind of partners that have the knowledge and the experience to help take that field from where exactly it is very key. So one of the examples I would like to use when I want to talk about exploration risk, because it's very important to consider that there's this Okwok field that's one of the 2003 marginal field round, and one of the very first things they did was to run an OBC, ocean bottom seismic, 3D seismic, to get very crisp, very good quality data and reinterpret the seismic. So getting the kind of data helped take the field, and very soon the field will come up and we'll be seeing volumes of about 17,000 barrels because of the right kind of technology, the right kind of data that they've got. So getting the right kind of data, reinterpreting, reassessing this data is very important for when we're talking about development consideration. So and now I'll call on Akim again to give us more insights on what are the key development considerations.
Okay, yeah, thank you, allow me. You said the ball rolling right. Okay, so technology, for example, gives you that head start. For example, you said something about processing the data itself can show some of those data sets are quite old, and using new technologies can help to filter and also bring out better reflectors in your seismic. That's for example. And we'll also talk about some modular solutions to, for example, for gas development, talk about some modular solutions where you can have the 5 million scope of gas processing facilities deployed by some companies here and there. You can have some sort of well testing equipment that can be deployed as well. That's in the face of if the well that you have inherited from the farmer is in good state, it's easier to get to first oil or first gas, as the case may be. But in a case where you have a marginal field awarded to you, and is shallow offshore, is even onshore, and the well one is not accessible, two, even if it's accessible, you are not able to use it in the state and manner that it is. So some diagnostic tools needs to be run, like you earlier mentioned, to check the status of all of these wells. So for investors, some of these questions are very key. There are several perspectives to this discussion: the investor's perspective and the awardee's perspective. The awardees may be the investor in some cases, while in some cases the awardee will still have to go hand in cap to look for investment, whether from the banks or from angel investors, as the case may be. So either ways, some of these questions needs to be answered by the awardees, and some of these questions needs to be asked by the investors, as the case may be. So, and answers needs to be provided. In a case where you're telling an investor, we'll get to first oil in 2 years, but however, the wells that you have available to you are not in good state. So you are talking about the initial workover costs or the initial diagnostic research that you need to do on those wells. So you are looking at that. Those are the minimum costs that you are looking at. But in a case where the wells are not accessible and are not usable, where the well is plugged and abandoned offshore, so you are practically drilling a new well. So, and you're looking at that cost compared to an onshore asset where you have the well in good state, as well as you have the well on, and you actually can just do a re-entry and do a completion, and you get to first oil. So those considerations are very key for an investor to critically assess his situation, whether he wants to stake his risk on the 5 million barrels offshore asset that the wells are not usable, or he wants to stake his risk on a 10 million barrels offshore asset that the wells are not usable, or you want to stake your risk on a 5 million barrels asset onshore that the wells are accessible and can get to first oil earlier. So some of these considerations are very key in terms of when an investor is deciding on what sort of asset he should invest in. But in a case where for the awardee now, some of these considerations are also key to know exact state of all of these wells, to be able to guide himself and even the investor properly, so as to get to first oil easily. And we spoke about modular solutions for oil, where testing equipment on lease to own arrangements can come in, as well as gas processing equipment that are modular, 5 million, small scaled, can also help to get the facilities to first oil, the wells to first oil. So those are some of the considerations. Well, for the offshore assets, we spoke about something, synergies between the operators as well as marginal field awardees. I haven't seen any case in point where the OML operator has readily, and I stand to be corrected, where the OML operator has readily opened their doors to take a 3-phase crude from a field that is from a marginal field that is within their OML. I haven't seen any case. Even if it is in the marginal field operator guideline, but it has not been enforced. It has not been enforced to the best of my knowledge. So that enforcement needs to come in place. Apart from looking for money to drill wells or do workovers on a well that you have inherited, you're also looking for money to put in facilities in place. When you talk of the processing equipment, you're talking about the flow stations, the EPFs, as the case may be, the gas processing unit, as well as the flow lines, as well as the pipelines. So, but when you take out the cost of processing facility by allowing marginal field operators to come in, maybe with a three-phase crude upon getting the assays and making sure that the crude properties are similar to what you can accept at your facility, then it reduces the exposure as well as the cost to get to first oil for some of these marginal field operators. So it's very key to look at some of these modular solutions, because most of these marginal fields, even if you're able to prove up the reserves to be bigger than what you have carried when the field was awarded to you, going in the modular way will help you to manage cost at the beginning until you get to cash flow. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, thank you. You've really delved very deep into that matter. It's really good. So thank you for that. On your, there was a point where you were giving this scenario whether would I take the 5 million barrels onshore to get me quickly to first oil. I think I'll want to get to first oil faster. So yeah, Demola, please let's have your perspective, please.
Okay. Thank you, Laomi and Akim. Akim has spoken extensively on the operational end of things, so I wouldn't delve into that. However, what I would just say is that I think it was a good idea for this round that was held to have included a competent person's report as part of the package, because essentially you can take that report and begin to talk to financial institutions. However, I would not advise that it stops there. There is often a step that many marginal field operators tend to sort of I won't say skip, but sometimes trivialize in their race to achieve first oil as fast as possible. We all know that is the goal, but you need to really take some time out to study the field. It's extremely important, because at the end of the day, you would come to the conclusion from a technical point of view that would have extremely great impact on financial decisions and how economic the field will be, and the development strategy. Because at the end of the day, there are certain things you are looking for. And perhaps maybe the best financial model that will work is reserve-based lending. And to get to that point, you need to be very, 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 clinical with respect to your reserves potential for the field. So things like the reserve potential, the rate of return, profit to investment ratio, net present value, payback period, strategic fit, portfolio alignment, and the producing life of the field are all factors that you must be clearly known and determined. And there's no shortcut to it. You have to do proper G&G studies. I come from a G&G background, so maybe I have a little bit of bias for that. So you need to do proper G&G studies. And you mentioned it earlier about a field operated by a marginal field operator, I think Oriental. And, one of the first things they did was to carpet the area with OBC. You might not want to go to that length because that is expensive, but first you look at what you have inherited from the original the owner of the lease, because the law says that they will transfer data to you. So you should get seismic data, well logs, pressure data, fluid synthesis data, and all sorts of relevant data. You look at what you have, and first you determine if it is fit for a proper study that would allow you come to very useful conclusions. And if it's fit, then you go ahead with your study. But if you need to improve one or two things somewhere, you might want to reprocess the seismic, for instance. and maybe have angle stacks and use that, to make a more informed decision, because we know that mainly in the Niger Delta, a lot of our petroleum, driven prospects are, AVO driven, which is a technology that is reliant on good seismic. So you want to start from there, So you do that, and then you go to the reservoir engineering, aspect of things. So you want to, be very sure about the dynamic properties. You want to know the evolution of the field through time. You want to do some forecast. You want to understand, the potential producing life of the field. You want to know whether your pressure will be maintained or it will drop at a certain point in time. Will I need to drill injector wells, and all that. So all that will help you determine the best, what I call fit for purpose development strategy. Of course, I mean, you are limited by a paucity of funds, which is one of the biggest limiting factors here, especially for local players. So you cannot have an elaborate development plan, So either you do it in phases, which is what I would always recommend. If it's one well you can bring on stream by carrying out a walkover, do that so that you have some cash flow. And as you have cash flow, you start planning, for the next phase of the development. So you can do them phased that way. The Marginal Field Act, allows you to keep wells, so unlike a situation where an IOC is operating a block, for instance, and they drill an exploration well, you're not allowed to keep it. You're supposed to drill an appraisal well and then your development wells. But for marginal field operators, you keep them. You can even keep existing wells if they're in good condition, like you mentioned, Laomi, if you're lucky, you can go back and do a walkover, do an intervention, and go back, and open up that well, and you start, producing. But you must be sure, of all the safety concerns, and then also you've done your studies properly so that you make an informed decision at the end of the day. So these are all the considerations I would say need to go into development. And I agree with what Akim said about synergy. I mean, I look at some of the shallow offshore fields that were awarded, and luckily a good number of them are clustered around the same area. Somewhere between OML 67, 100, and 102. There are a couple of fields, they're clustered together. There is no reason why they should not be talking to each other. As Akim mentioned earlier, it's difficult, producing into an existing operator's facilities. The rules are so stringent, there are so many things that come into play. But maybe a unique solution could be synergies among the local players. There's nothing stopping those in that area, for instance, from jointly putting funds together, and you have an FSO into which they can all produce into and benefit from, in that area, and relieve themselves from the burden and all the bottleneck and bureaucracy that is associated with producing into an existing operator's facility. So there are so many things to talk about, to look at, so many considerations to make. But at the end of the day, you want to do a very economic, fit for purpose development, that will take you to first oil, as quick as possible. Thank you.
Okay, Demola. Just give me a minute. Okay, thank you very much, Demola. Please, can you hear me? My speaker was acting on.
Positive. Yes,
Yeah.
you can.
Okay, great. So, I mean, I like your perspective. You've gone from technical and you've gone to financial. I really wanted us to talk a bit more financial, but we're also trying to keep to time, and it's 1 o'clock. We're supposed to go into the Q&A session right now. Maybe at that time when we see questions that relate to financing, then we can even talk a bit more about it. But for closing, one thing I would want to say is when we compare 2003 to now, a lot has changed, like I said at the beginning. So there's, technical is so important, but the dynamics of the global energy space is so different now that we are now worried about, multiple taxation issues. Yeah, fine, at the point you will like get the wells right. We have a lot of technical experts that can make sure you drill the well right, hit the target, the figure. But what about the above the ground issues, like, cost reduction issues? You need to be sure that you are not spending more than you need to spend to make sure you get to first oil, at a very, with the right pricing, the right revenues, and the right income margins are so key for you. So you are thinking of multiple taxation, government policies, and how that affects you. So I think the successful marginal field operators will be the ones that are agile, and they adopt cost-effective measures in their business model, in their strategy, so that at the end of the day, they will come out, and while others are not able to make it, they are tops, and they are making it because they have been able to develop the right kind of model, the right kind of strategies. Cost effectiveness is the most important thing at the end, because the dynamics of the space, of the energy space, is so different now compared to what it was 20 years ago, or so many years ago. So with that said, we're going into the Q&A now. So I will hand over back to Omomi, where she would run through the questions that are in the chat box, and then we can take that as a further discussion so that we can finish at 1:30.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Olaomi, Akim, and Ademola. That was very insightful. I was hoping that the student administrators would follow, and we're trying to, but I think there are a lot of technical words, but we did well with them. Thank you so much. So we don't have much of the questions, but just to quickly note that we all right, just so before the Q&A, we will be having a periodic insight into the core issues as regards this industry. So you can allow us to send you some emails. There'll be a link for that later. So there'll be a periodic insight to see more details about all of these things that we're talking about. And because it is real, it's happening. It's not something abstract. People are investing every day, and people also need to get their returns on investment. And also, just to have a quick recap, we talked, I know that Demola was mentioning something about we need to take time. It's not to get to the first oil. I know that's the goal, but let's take time so we don't crash back in the middle. And Akim was also talking about synergy. That's key. Synergy about now, okay, you want to farm out to us. Don't leave us alone. Give us more things, that more instruments that we need. Talk to us. Let's share these facilities. And of course, allow me, has tried to anchor you well. Thank you so much. So the questions that are before us, I think I'm going to direct the first one from Mike Ben. Please explain the challenges the 2002-2003 marginal field awardees experienced that prevented the 11th field reaching first oil. That's interesting. Akim, would you like to take that, please? Why? Why do we have 11 not producing? Why?
Okay, so during the course of some of my discussion, I said something about fields that are just about 2-3 kilometers away from each other. And one of them has reached first oil since 2008 or thereabout, and the other two hasn't reached first oil. And you wonder why that has happened. So there seems to be some sort of I own 100% of 100% of this business kind of. Okay. So it's very critical that synergies. Demola spoke about synergies amongst even local operators. I would expect that would happen for that question, for those 3 fields in question, which is the Ajapa, Ogeria, and Akepo. And So it's very critical that the government makes it a law that assets, the marginal fields or marginal fields within a block should synergize so that we'll have less imprint of facilities moving everywhere. So that's one. And I also like to talk about
Is Akim network on mine?
Okay, I think we're experiencing some technical glitch. So yeah, but I think I'll just ride on what Akim has been saying while wait for him to come back. Yeah, so I totally agree, with synergies, what he has been saying, and I think it's a great way to go. So maybe Demola can talk a bit more. Then when Akim comes, Akim come. Akim, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, you were frozen for a while, so if you could conclude your thoughts.
Okay, so I also wanted to speak about awardees coming together with facilities company, doing a business pitch to facilities company, just the way awardees will go to a bank and do an investment pitch, to facilities company. Let the risk of building facilities be shared such that you pay back in crude once you get to first oil. It's very critical. It's very critical that the awardees don't try to own all of the risk, so that the facilities company can also take up some of the risk. Once the business parameters, economic parameters are good enough, we can all share in the risk and share in the reward. I think that will be a way to go as well, so that an awardee doesn't have to think about building its own facility all alone. A cluster of marginal fields can come together and pitch that sort of economic indices to a facilities company. I think that will go a long way to help. So you mentioned in 2011, so we say funding is a key part, but some of the solutions that can help with funding will be that if you synergize, you are not raising too much money on your own. The 3 companies or 4 companies can come together and the risk is shared, as well as pitching that same economic indices that you have looked at based on your reserve base that you have, and pitching that to a facilities company, and everyone will smile to the bank once the investment and the economics of the development is positive. I think that will be it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just to add a little to that, and I think the DPR is also trying to go in that direction. I mentioned earlier that when they were awarding this field, they didn't award one field to a particular company. So what they try to do is to bring people together. Yes, how they will work, will be maybe they will form a special purpose vehicle, a special company to do that. How they will decide who is technical partner, who is operator, that would will come to light later. But the point is that the idea of collaboration and forming a consortium and synergy is still the key, because I think even the DPR had identified that this is one of the key challenges that that happened in the last bid round. So I guess maybe it's also the direction of your thinking. But thanks a lot, Akim. I like your input.
Okay, if I could just jump in there just very quickly, just share a few thoughts. I'm going to be a bit blunt here for the reason why quite a number of them were not successful from the 2003 set. You see, the issue is that a lot of people entered into this business without without proper understanding of what it entails. So we discovered that a lot of people were just speculators, just trying to hold on to assets and then find one foreign company or whatever they can sell equity to, and all that, without any serious plan to develop, the asset. which is something I believe the DPR should look into very, very critically, to ensure the success of this current round, so that you can, quickly weed out the speculators from those who are serious about developing these assets. Yes, funding was a major, major, major challenge for all of them, but some were very creative about it. Allow me mention something that is important, because that is having corporate governance, having a very, very good, corporate structure and governance in place, which unfortunately, is missing when you look at a lot of local, players. So if you're going to go out to look for funds, approach an investment company, a venture capitalist or whatever, out there, there are certain things they are going to look at. They are going to do their due diligence. They want to look at your compliance, and all that. And if your, governance structure is faulty, or your company is not properly structured, of course you'll be looked at as being unserious. So this is aside other considerations. And then I think the third main problem was that a lot of them had little or no operatorship expertise. That was a huge problem that we saw. But that in itself is not a showstopper. Some also got creative about that and were able to build competence over time. After all the big companies today started from zero, somewhere many years ago. It just depends on how you go about it, So for me, these were the key points why most of them failed. I hear you loud and clear about synergy, but you must also note that synergy on paper is excellent, but practically can be difficult. It's like a marriage, and each partner has a role to play and must play his or her role very well. So if I'm in synergy with another company or a group of other companies and they are not, performing well, their corporate structure and governance is faulty, or maybe they are not, keeping to their cash call obligations, and things like that, then we are going to have problems. And this is often what you see amongst local players. So it's not magic. It's not surprising that those who are doing well, if you look deeply, are, very organized, have good governance structure in place, and are very serious about this business. Thank you.
Great, thank you
so much. Thank you, everyone. That was insightful. So we've heard, and I hope I hope you're pleased with the answers you got. All right, the next question is, how can a startup like us, I think that's coming from Said Emi Awojude, get expansion investment for equity in the company? We leverage on technology to solve sanitation challenges and tapping into the ways to help gas or power, biogas solution, gas or power. I think I want to allow me to talk about that.
Okay. All right, Said, thanks for your question. I think it's a top question in the minds of whether startup or whatever the stage of business you are. Of course, I can give several options, right? But I think it will be easier and more professional if I have more information about what you do. So I think it might be a discussion that you want to take out of this platform. But just to answer broadly, startups, there are so many options. For instance, there are startup incubators, because I don't know the level of your startup, so I can't really say so much. But there are startup incubators that work for specific. I know I've run one for climate-focused entrepreneurs, climate-focused startups, where they do incubation and then they get some kind of funding depending on the level. There are some run by All On. There's one run by All On. I know they focus on solar. And I think maybe a bit of gas, I'm not quite sure. So there are startup incubators that focus on startups. Another option could be you work directly to venture capital. So whether angel investor or a venture capital. And of course, it will depend, like I said, on your project, the kind of the stage you are, even at being a startup. Before they will be able to assess to determine whether they will fund you. And a startup project can also be funded with project finance. So meaning that developing a special purpose vehicle for the project specifically, and the goal is just for a particular project, let's say gas plant, for instance, that can be funded by project finance. And in all ramification, you'd say it's a startup, but it's not a startup company, but it's a startup project. So I hope that has been able to, just give you a few tips on how you can go about it. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. I think the discussion can go on after now. That's why I shared the email, so you can email us and we can talk about the startup. Thank you very much, ma. I hope Said is pleased. Then this one, I think, do you have any link you can share of the awardee of the recently concluded marginal field and the owners? It appears the details are already available. If you can provide that before the end of the day, we will. Then I'll move on to—
that's something that will be left to DPR to provide. So DPR will decide what they want to give to the public and when they will make available such information. So it's not something we will provide.
All right, no problem. Thank you. So I go to Okechukwu Elechi. Are you able to share any insight on other considerations such as security and legacy community issues? We didn't talk about that. So is Mr. Ademola going to go on with that, please? Security.
Okay. Yeah, those are very, very valid concerns. And this is the reason why some players prefer looking offshore than onshore, because onshore you will deal with more community problems and security issues. To the best of my knowledge or understanding, there's nothing specific about that. The marginal field operator would have to find a way to work with the community, especially if they are onshore. We all know in the PIB now that there's the introduction of the host community fund. It remains to see how that would be, implemented, but it's a good development that ensures that the community takes ownership of, of facilities, and also of, they have a stake in what is coming out of their community. So it's in their best interest to ensure that the area is safe and secure for operations to continue. I mean, the more you are able to produce from there, the more prosperity is guaranteed for the community. But the underlying question there is implementation. It remains to be seen how it will be done. So based on the score sheets, or should I say scorecard of the 2003 set, most of them have not done bad with respect to community relations, but I think the major issue they've had has been pipeline vandalization, which still remains a big problem today. You're struggling to produce 2,000 barrels per day, and then the trunk line into which you're producing, is vandalized. The impact is going to be very serious, for you. Because you're trying to make your numbers, add up. So that is a big problem today. I don't know how the government is going to try to solve that, but it's just something that has to be, unfortunately, I have to say, for the moment, we have to live with or try to find a creative solution around, So that, of course, is factored into your economics, and, your production considerations and things like that. Are you going to, if you're lucky, you're within an estuary or swamp area, are you going to have a badge as a backup plan whenever, the trunk line is down, which happens very, very often, very, very often. So yeah, it's a problem that is there, but let's see if the PIB will help address that, going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ademola. All right, so we have political concerns from Ogunyemi, Ogunfemi, Olushola. So Akim, please, would you like to talk about political influence on this subject matter?
Okay, political influence on what?
On this subject matter, marginal field, what's the influence and how is it going to affect it?
I'm not sure, that is not above my pay grade, but I want to say specifically that the last marginal field was seen to be generally free and fair. Generally, I say. I haven't said that it was, but I'm saying generally. But in the case where you have whether there was political influence on who the fields have been awarded to, I may not be able to clearly comment on that. So I think I'll leave that to the insiders to be able to comment. So
It's like you're alone.
Security, some sort of virtual monitoring. Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, okay. So I was just saying that I do not see how I'm waiting to see how we can use.
Okay, Mr. Adigun, you are fluctuating.
Okay, if I could just jump in there very quickly.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. I don't think it's a question we should shy away from. You can see that within the framework of the Marginal Field Act, amended in 2005, and I think it's more or less the same in the PIB from what I've seen. You see that you need presidential consent for a field to be ranked within the marginal field basket. Okay, and there are ways it's done, you know. So the original owner or the lease owner is asked by government to voluntarily release some of these fields, you know, and at times they are compelled to. So you know then that if you're going to require presidential consent, that, you know, there is a political angle to it. So it just makes sense that when you are putting your team together, that you have one or two people that have political influence on your team. It's as simple as that. Look at all the successful marginal field operators today. Look at the board. There's one or two persons on that board that are what we call political door openers. So it's inevitable. Someone that can walk into the Ministry of Petroleum and have audience with the Minister of Petroleum. It's as simple as that. You know, if you don't have such within your team, then maybe you might struggle a little bit. But that is not to say that the process is just you just walk in and cherry pick or do what we call point and kill to what you want. No. That's not how it works. You know, there are still so many things to look at. And I think they've done a good job relatively, you know, with this last bid round, you understand, to make it as transparent as possible, you know. So there are technical considerations, there are financial considerations. Just because you are the cousin of the Minister of Petroleum does not mean you will get that field. If you cannot demonstrate to us that you have the technical know-how and the financial, you know, connections to attract funding to develop the field. But I'm just saying that the political angle is equally important. And really, if you can have political door openers in your team, then it's an added advantage. Thank you.
Okay, that's strategic planning. Thank you, Demola.
Thank you, Demola. I think you just hit the nail on the head. Everybody wants to eat the target well. So somebody has to know somebody to walk up to somebody. Thank you very much. So the last question for today, please, because of our time, is from Stephen Onyeforo. Can you please give an overview of the perception of the international investment community with regard to MF, that's marginal field and support in Nigeria? Are there specific regions that we see an upsurge of interest and vice versa? Olatunji, I don't know if you understand the question.
Okay, I understood the first part, but I didn't quite get what it meant by upsurge of interest or anything. But when it comes to the international perspective, and so thanks for the question. I mean, it's key because when you talk of financing, a lot of it will come, not from your own pocket, debt, equity mix, or different stages. Even if you start at equity with, the initial awardees and their partners, there will be it's not something a person or a firm will do. There will be technical partners that will come in, there will be financial partners. So it's also very key that there's equity that's coming from international bodies. So in my view, the PIB, I believe it's a very important door opener for to bring investor confidence into the petroleum space in Nigeria. So, I mean, that's another matter for another day. But what I just want to point out is that the fact that the PIB has made progress, even the international investors are talking about it. So it's a good perception of what we're doing in Nigeria right now concerning the marginal field. So I think that it's a positive, it will give a positive influence. Then, of course, when it comes to investments. I mentioned earlier that yes, there's climate change talks and limiting financing to fossil fuel, but at the end of the day, investors want what? They want good return on their investment. So if I'm going to get good return on marginal fields, then I will stay there and I will get it. So whether I'm an international investor or I'm a Nigerian private equity firm or a regional private equity firm, the most important thing at the end of the day will be the returns that they will get on their investment. So that's it.
Thank you so much. Oh, I think we can say now that we've reached a good conclusion on this matter. And like I said, there are more information in the white paper. Please go to the link to see more details. Then you can also ask questions in the email I shared. So anything you want us to talk about. So right about now, I'll just move on with my slide to wrap up today's event. All right, so sorry. All right, we just want to introduce you to our gas strategies at Brockville. We give you technical and commercial due diligence for this gas. I talked about era of gas. So we're just looking at how we can build your capacity in-house or anywhere to help you across the value chain to give you a good development for your project. So you can reach out to us and we'll share more details about this with you. You can be rest assured that you are having a sustainable project in gas. So these are contacts, the web, you can invite any media, the website is there, the email address, and the links for all of these things that we talk about too. And we are going to share the recording like I promised. We'll work on that, and I think it will be available on YouTube as well. So it was a good time with everyone. I want you to please grab a chocolate, as you can see on my screen, and take some water. So if there's no other comment from Olaomi, I'd like to draw the curtain now.
Okay, so thank you, Momi, for very pleasant moderating. Thank you, Demola, Lanisa, and thank you, Akim Adigun, for very insightful panel discussion. I really enjoyed speaking. And thank you to every single person that joined us and also stayed to the end. I mean, right now as I'm speaking, we still have 66 people. So it gives me confidence that there's been impact and there's been. So if you want to reach Brockville, you can reach us via this link, the Linktree link, and you can also reach us at projects@Brockville Investments. So any talk so we are positioned for technical and commercial analysis. So that's our gain stage, those are our strong points, both technical. So anything that has to do with geoscience, engineering, and then the commercial. So we like to play at that intersection. So that's what we do at Brockville Investments. So you can reach out to us and we'll be very happy to take your questions and your considerations. So thank you once again for joining, and we look forward to having more conversations with you.
All right, thank you. I understand there are some distinguished guests. We couldn't mention their names. We really acknowledge you and we thank you for joining the conversation. So everyone, have a good evening. Yeah, it's already afternoon, about time going into evening. So please enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you from all of us at Brockville. We appreciate you. God bless you.
Ademola and Akim, would you like to just say something?
Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to just say a big thank you for this opportunity, and I've also learned a lot, and I look forward to more interesting discussions like this in the future. Thank you to everyone who joined and stayed and listened, and yeah, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brockville, for having us. Thank you, everyone that joined in. We look forward to having more deliberations on this. See you at AAPG. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you at AAPG. Okay, thank you.
Bye.